Now, you're all very welcome to a very special edition of The Racing Room. It's the 52nd show, which by my calculations means that'll be 1 year of podcasts. And my God, it's been a hard one to get going. We've definitely went about 16 to 1 to actually record this because, to explain, Anthony's down in Spain, Harry is up in Northern Ireland, and there's Wi-Fi issues to beat the band here. But hopefully, you're going to be listening to this in its full entirety here for the next hour or so. We're going to take a different approach to the podcast, lads. But before we do that, we might just reflect on a year of podcasts because, as I said, with our issues this morning, it's no mean feat getting these done every week. And AK, I'll bring you in here because I remember the conversations at the start, what podcast, what route you were going to go down. Just talk about doing a preview, a tips show, maybe a review show. And in the end, kind of landed on this kind of conversational, opinion-led topic thing. And I think it's gone rather well. How do you reflect on the first year of podcasts?
It's gone probably better than it had for the rest of this morning, I'd say, Ronan. We're about an hour in here and just starting, so it might be our 52nd show. It's probably our 52nd take with the Wi-Fi as well. So, no, it's been pretty good. I must say it's probably gone better than I expected. Just obviously been in Galway for a week. The amount of people that come up to you and say, "Love the podcast, listen to the podcast." You get quite a few comments of keep fucking sticking it to them and telling them the truth and stuff like that. So, like, it's. I think we can, even myself, can maybe too much focus on some of you're always negative, lads. I think people do appreciate you telling them the truth. The reason I started it up, I suppose, was because I used to be quite a big fan of the Monday show, the Bet for Racing Monday podcast from 3, 4, 5 years ago. That had Hugh as host and Tony on the show. Didn't really listen to the Friday one, to be honest with you. I've never really been too fussed about listening to people's opinions on what horses they think will win and stuff like that. Just from a personal preference, it's not the way I bet myself. So, but I love the Monday show. Warts and all. There used to be a lot of good conversation, a lot of back and forward, and obviously Hugh left that show, and then Tony as well. And then it kind of morphed into something else, and I stopped listening. And I just wanted to bring that back, basically, because probably a bit of narcissism involved, that I wanted to listen to that kind of stuff again. And we're lucky enough to be involved. And just from what we hear around the track, people seem to like it, basically, which is good.
Very good. Tony, you're kind of the driver of the whole thing. You set the agenda every week. I think we've alluded to that a few times on the podcast. Do you want to take us through some of the notable episodes? Obviously, the band are back was the very first one, and that's the most popular one. So that's probably saying something. It's all gone downhill.
Yeah, we've had some good numbers. Obviously, we record it on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and yeah, we've got some really good numbers. Lean on Me was a good one. Feeling Aggrieved, the Dylan Phelan case. Hopefully, we had a small part to play in him actually getting paid out there. But I think for me, the most important ones are the ones with big topics, big news stories that we cover, warts and all. A lot of people feed into us directly about they want this certain stories covered, and we're happy to. As long as we can stand them up, I'm happy to run with them and call people out. That's to me, what to me is kind of like the pleasing element of our podcast so far, that we do get stuck into the nitty gritty stories and that others aren't allowed to, or just basically bang ignore. So yeah, for me, I think editorially, hopefully it stacks up and the numbers reflect that, I think.
And then, Harry, do you want to come in briefly? It's did you foresee yourself doing podcasts just over a year ago and doing them so regularly as you have been?
Certainly not so regularly. I to be honest with you, I just thought I was a guest on the first podcast, and then the next thing I know is I've been on every one since, and I'm finding it increasingly impossible to extricate myself from it. But it's been very good fun. The best podcasts for me were the ones where I think we're able to offer a bit, more that other outlets can't offer. Particularly the Rory Campbell syndicate stuff springs to mind. that was very interesting because we were being contacted by, members of the syndicate, people who'd worked with it, and we were getting ahead of the game really, on sort of more mainstream media outlets on that one. So that was, while it was very miserable for those involved, it was quite exhilarating, I think, for us to be covering that story. Worst one was the one we had to do twice because AK forgot to press record. That was about 6 weeks in. I'm not sure if we ever revealed that, but yeah, we did it. We did it twice, and it was very interesting because it showed that we could. We were very professional. We could make a podcast that was pretty bad both times around, actually. So it was good.
Don't speak too soon.
Well, this one is living by the skin of its teeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting dodgy messages here, but we'll keep going. We'll keep moving it on while we're on a roll. But as I said at the start, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach this week, lads, as on Tony's kind of suggestion that we let our viewers and listeners kind of guide the show with regards to topics and just let their questions bring each topic on. So you'll get the gist of it as we go along. But basically, the listeners are getting the say of how we conduct the questions this week, which is cool, and we might something we might try again if it goes well. But we'll start with, I guess, the most talked about thing on racing Twitter over the weekend, and had loads and loads of questions about this with regards to Daryl Carter. His video, we don't want to duck anything, I suppose. When people have questioned this, we'll have a comment on it. And Tony, I suppose you mentioned a couple of times and on podcast with Daryl before. What did you make of all this? 274,000 views on the video is quite incredible, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that might be one aspect of it. I mean, if it is a calculated meltdown to get to viewing figures, then it certainly worked there. Obviously, I've worked with him in the past, never really got on, never really rated him. So just putting that out there. Had one big fallout with him, which probably resulted in me being binned on the podcast. But I've got nothing against him personally. He seems to have a problem with me. He has a fair few pops from now and again, which is quite surprising considering I've had no interaction with him, direct or otherwise, for over a year. And if he's got a problem with me, that's fine. But he hasn't articulated that to me. What I thought was odd about the weekend, it just seems like a complete kind of like meltdown. I don't think it was planned. Look, we've all had first-hand experiences with people with addiction problems, lifestyle issue, mental health, problems. So I'm not going to, as I put in a tweet, I'm not going to kick him when he's down. That to me screamed like a person who needs kind of attention. He needs a friend to get hold of him and just say, look, this isn't great. But a lot of people said it was planned to get, the viewing figures as was alluded to. But to me, I just thought it's a pity then people go down that route. Don't get me wrong, I've had my moments numerous times before on X and Twitter, but that was not only the video he put out, but the subsequent barrage of C-ridden tweets, etc., and calling people out and saying he wants to box me and stuff like that. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm 56-year-old, for God's sake. But no, look, abuse doesn't bother me. That didn't bother me. But I just thought it was highly odd behaviour, and it just screamed like somebody who needs a bit of help and attention and a friend to get hold of them, like I said.
We'll leave that there then, and we'll move on, gents, and kind of bring in the Goodwood kind of thread of questions. So obviously lots to reflect on over the week at Goodwood, loads of stories and angles. So we'll start with Alan Hunter, and kind of a general trend with questions this week. So Alan Hunter's asking, why was there so little to glory in the glorious Goodwood Festival? And I might just bring in on the same kind of thread, John Joe Lang from the Bar Stewards had a question for us as well, just saying, what was there an official embargo on the racing media calling out any of the farcical events at Goodwood this week? Because everything I've read infers we were all dancing around a maypole eating cherry woof nuffs all week. So was the kind of coated over what was, a few different issues here and there. Tony, do you want to come in first on that? Because I know you would have watched it all very closely.
Yeah, it was obviously, it was always on in the background. Didn't watch so much of Saturdays. It's like anything really. Racing TV and ITV are never really gonna get stuck in editorially for the big stories because it's I think they think their brief is to be positive and be, I wouldn't say cheerleaders for the sport because that's a bit disrespectful, but accentuate the positive while kind of like downplaying the negative. And there was plenty of negativity around Goodwood this week. We had, 5 or 6 horses pulled up. We had trainers privately criticising the ground. We had 2 fatalities, including Trushan. We had kind of like draw biases coming up. It wasn't a satisfactory viewing and betting medium throughout the week. And obviously we had, as we'll come on to, we had flag starts for a Group 1 where they were strung out like washing when they started. So it wasn't a great spectacle throughout the week. And I think that's what kind of like John Joe's alluding to. A lot of things weren't called out, but what's look, again, it's kind of, you don't want to be too negative about that, but there were issues that probably should have been addressed in the TV coverage more than they were. But like I said, I don't think that's in their brief.
I think racing misses a massive selling point by not talking about that stuff. Ironically, like I think people in this day and age just want to hear honest opinion, warts and all. Don't care if it's negative, don't care if it's positive. They just want to hear, not the extremes, maybe the extremes, but they want stories like that full gallop or whatever that program was, just washing over the Bryony Frost stuff and stuff like that. Like that is the stuff like that people that could have actually. I know it's a negative story, with negative connotations or whatever, but that is an unbelievably interesting story. And I just think in general coverage of the media of horse racing, we should actually it should be just more warts and all, telling the truth, positives and negatives. And I get the fact probably like this podcast you might end up focusing more on the negatives, but it'd actually get people talking about stuff, I think, rather than it just drifting piece of driftwood floating down the stream of just nothingness, I think.
Harry, do you want to come in on it, maybe on a general sense of Goodwood last week? I don't know how much of it you got to catch, and there's obviously lots of different news stories, but we have a couple of questions here, just in general terms. Chris Davis is asking, is Glorious Goodwood massively overrated? You get to Saturday and you sit there, think, well, that just seems rubbish, seems the same every year. I'm wondering, like, betting turnover, does it different and stuff like that? Well, what do you make of Goodwood as it was this weekend in a general sense?
I like Goodwood. It probably suffers from being kind of a poor relation to Royal Ascot. It probably suffers from the time of year it's in nowadays. A lot of people are away.
Poor relation is his inbred third cousin, I think.
And I think that it does fall between a couple of more popular meetings. It probably had slightly faded away from, popularity. The only thing I really wanted to comment on it last week was the Trushan stuff, and the trigger happy Twitter accounts that wanted to go flying in on. Well, first there were 2 types. One, they were very keen immediately to tell you how sad they were and how worried they were for the horse's welfare. And then that's followed by the kind of blame accounts. That horse is too old, should never have been running, that kind of thing. And it does appear that this is the quintessential example of bad luck in these things, and that a reminder that in racing, it doesn't matter how much welfare you do, not to say that you shouldn't do an awful lot, but it doesn't matter how much you do, you're going to have horses die while racing. And there are just a few Twitter accounts and people who perhaps just need to, in my view, count to 10 a bit more before getting on to the kind of how upset they personally are by it. Because I think that then feeds into the angry Twitter accounts who, this should never have happened, and that kind of stuff. And actually, this was just a real tragedy, desperately sad for the connections, who were obviously very hard hit by it. And I actually think that racing is its own enemy with this stuff sometimes, because there are just people within it who follow the sport very closely and indeed are employed in the sport, who are actually the quickest to kind of get these balls of the blame balls rolling.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, the Alan King interview on with Lydia Hislop was particularly insightful. I thought. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys caught that, but
And the
he spoke very
BHA, the
well. I thought.
BHA dealt with it very well. I thought as well. Their statements about basically these things happen, and explaining exactly what happened. I thought it was dealt with excellently by everyone, and just it's terribly sad. And but stop blaming everyone for everything.
Yeah, amazing day for Holly Doyle it was as well. Given she rode a big winner earlier on the card, that's the racing in a nutshell for her ups and downs.
Yeah.
But we might take in the kind of weather aspect on when it absolutely poured down from the heavens on Wednesday, because it's changed a lot, and a lot of talk about the going, and then we'll move on to the decision to run the Nassau Stakes from a flag start. But Tony, we had a couple of questions on the going. One from Sando. Goodwood clerk panicking and immediately going to heavy. And then Rob's asking, I expect you'll cover it as the resident weatherman TC, but watering reports given by Goodwood honestly makes it impossible to have a bet. What did you kind of make of the whole way they dealt with that, I suppose?
I think I heard Ed Chamberlain on ITV saying the clerk of the course held his hands up on about the watering on Sunday and Monday. Didn't put a lot on, but he was watering on good ground, which I think is against the kind of like the BHA edict. So he actually started on good ground, and a lot of trainers apparently had concerns about how loose the surface was. So if the clerk of the course did hold his hands up there, then that's fine. I wrote about it, and I just said I thought it was odd, and I wrote about that on the days itself. So but I don't think that's a massive deal because he wasn't putting on shed loads. What was the other question? About about panicking and putting it into heavy. Again, I think the clerk of the course held his hands up the next day. Just said, look, they got 28 mil in 20 minutes, so it went from good to firm in places and called it heavy. I think most people would assume that was heavy ground. I mean, he downgraded it the next morning, but I wouldn't beat him up about that, because some of the scenes on TV, it was absolute comedy. I mean, it really was, biblical, as they say, monsoon-like. But yeah, I wouldn't beat him up on either one, but it sounds like like I said, he did hold his hands up to agree there.
The freak storm as well that came through and swept through the track. Never seen anything like it. AK, Andy DeLodge is asking thoughts on Whirlpool place return in the Sussex Stakes for the second there, Resallion. 101 paid on the Whirlpool, which is obviously 1 to 100. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it's not good, is it? It's just I just hope some people have bet it and migrate away from that rubbish, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. It's unsatisfactory. Like, you can't be paying hundreds on, like you say. It just shows you how much is being bet into those pools. I'd say I don't know how many bets that is, but for what stakes. But I'd imagine nobody's betting into them. Essentially, it's part of the problem. And then they have to give returns on markets nobody's betting into. And as a pool system, it's not what you want.
One thing that was really curious. Sorry, Ronan. One thing that was really curious about that. I went and had a look at the Racing Post results section. Now, it was a 7-runner race, and as everyone knows, 7-runner race 2 places, but the actual returns were to 3 places. I'd imagine that's what Whirlpool do. But since when did the Racing Post results section give returns for what the Whirlpool were covering and not what the traditional place terms were? I mean, they were 151 to the winner, which presumably is a guaranteed tote price.
Yeah, exactly.
150.
I'd imagine it was less than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
in reality,
yeah, it would have been some coincidence if it was bang on. And the place returns were 750 in a freeway market, 101 and 140. Now, I'm confused whether that was actually the tote market or the Whirlpool market. And if it was the Whirlpool market, I'm surprised that was so light, given the amount of money being presumably bet into the pools from Hong Kong. So I did ask around, but I couldn't get a definitive answer for anybody about why the Racing Post were giving out 3 places when it was a 2-place race.
It sounds like a UK tort return to Whirlpool place terms. It sounds like I don't know if there's some. I don't know. I've not looked into it personally. I care very little for the tort and the pools, as I'm sure you know. So, it's all a bit bizarre, unsatisfactory for whoever had the bet anyway, because you're getting an appalling price as your return.
Indeed, we leave that there. Martin's asking, Harry, I might bring you into this. Is it right to be staging one of our best races, i.e. the Nassau Stakes, with a start more akin to a Nace Maiden Hurdle than a Group 1 contest?
Surely they could have put Nace Maiden Hurdles, but
harsh. Surely they could have put the race back an hour, held it the following day, put it on Saturday, etc. I'm not sure how feasible that would have been, Harry. What do you think there?
I don't think you can just put it back a day like you can sort of with the cricket. I don't know enough about the decision making that was made on the day. Usually, there's so many moving parts to these things. You've got the people at the racetrack, and probably more importantly, you've got the media rights issues to deal with. It did seem like a freak occurrence, this one, and I think that it will hopefully be forgotten about. It was a dreadful spectacle. Simon Rowland's put up a screenshot on X the other day of I think it was half a second into the race, and the horses looked like, if they were going to be doing a podcast together, they'd need to do it via Zoom, because they were a long way apart from one another. And I think the fact that they were perhaps saved by the fact that Well was in a very good position and won. But as Sheen Murphy's man basically still seemed to have an official holding on to the reins when the flag went down. So it was badly done, but it was a freak occurrence in freak circumstances. So I don't think it's something that we need to worry too much about.
Indeed. Tony, after your comments, sorry, this question from Jason. Tony, after your comments about Sing Us a Song earlier in the week, do you stand by your comment basically saying racing talks a good time about welfare? Do you think that's, he's asking, do you think that's unfair now?
No, I thought it was appalling piece of officialdom. What actually happened is Sing Us a Song went into the stalls, went down in the stalls, seemed to get wedged, had one leg over one of the stanchions, and clearly was getting very agitated, but they corrected the horse, pulled him out, and I think Richard Hoyles basically said, very unlikely runner, because normally in those circumstances, they always err on the side of caution. But they pulled the horse out. I actually went back and watched it on +1. I think it was about 14 seconds between the horse being pulled out and James Doyle getting back on the horse. They trotted it for about 4 seconds in front of what was presumably 2 officials, one presumably being a vet. There was the only kind of like vet interaction was watching the horse trot, and then again it went straight back in the stalls. Now, I think most people were pretty flabbergasted that horse ran, and we're talking about 130 favourite in an ITV Goodwood handicap with presumably a lot of money riding on it. And I can guarantee you now, not one person who backed that horse would want that horse to have run after what they just saw. And I just thought, from a horse welfare point of view, it was a very, very bad look.
Indeed, yeah. Neil Payne's asking, is Colin Keane already on borrowed time as Jude Montt retained rider? That ride on Friday was too bad to be true. I'm pretty sure he was talking about the ride on Cosmic Year, Tony.
Yeah, it's his first ride back after a suspension. Wasn't the finest hour in the Forerunner race, but it's typical racing, isn't it? I mean,
it's unreal, isn't it? It's actually unreal. He's unbelievable.
One ride back.
I think we should get this guy on the podcast.
Yeah, I think what most people think he's the best rider in Ireland. He has rode a couple of poor rides recently, as when he's coming over here to ride for Judgment. But to say is it time to call? Is it call time on him as a retained jockey for judgment after one ride? He's
In
just
trouble if he was riding in those purple silks of Kia, he'd probably be in trouble. But I think Jude Montt have a bit more patience there, and they probably onto a winner with Keane. I think he'll show himself to be an excellent appointment. David's asking, Jamie Spencer doesn't get too many fancied horses these days, does he? You noticed this as well, Tony's not getting as many big
um,
race rides as he used to.
yeah, I had a quick look at this. He's had 10 winners from 125 rides this year for 8% strike rate. Clearly doesn't get the big rides anymore. He's already retired once and come back. I think it's fair to say he's like I know him quite well. I used to work with him for a few years, and lovely bloke. But he has a set way of riding, hold up, letting the horse find its feet, and then come home in the best time possible. Uh, he is generally one of the most slated jockeys for that. But it's all to do with his stable associations. He rides primarily for David Simcock, who's doesn't have many runners now. But yeah, I mean, he's a hugely talented jockey, but for punters, he's usually frustrating as well. And if he listens to this, I'll probably get an abusive text. But I think it's honest. I think it's honest to say that he does. I wouldn't say split opinion because I think most people are probably against him for the way he rides. But like I said, I'll leave it there.
Well, if you want a bit of a laugh, anytime Spencer's on a fast finishing second, just type his name into X there,
Oh,
and
yeah. He gets it. Yeah,
you'll see rage like no other, I suppose, on Twitter. But Andre Jordan's asking, difficult race courses to punt on. Goodwood and Chester, the two biggest culprits for hard luck stories for punters. I suggest to Andre, bring you in, Tony, if you like, but these are the tracks that because it's difficult to punt on, you should be trying to get going at these tracks, I suppose, because the more difficult it is, then the more opportunities there. I always find anyway, betting, and the hard luck part of it is you just got to take that on the chin. What do you think, Tony, or what's your kind
I
of?
think for most courses, they're all very tricky in their own right. I mean, obviously we saw the Stewards Cup dictated by a draw bias on the near side, but you get that everywhere. You get that at Ascot. You just get that everywhere. And Newmarket July meeting, that's normally overwatered, and every course has its challenges. And in fact, he's talking about Chester. A lot of punters now have veered away from the obvious, and they are betting the wide drawn horses. I think the stats in the last 2 years have gone more towards there being under bet. And I think yesterday at Chester, basically all the horses that won were wide draws. So yeah, every course has its challenge. I wouldn't particularly single out Goodwood or Chester, but it's just a recency short-term bias if he's had a bad week, isn't it?
Yeah, I think as a punter, you want to be, if anything, you want to be focusing more on that stuff where it depends what your betting style is. I think a lot of people that get frustrated with the results at tracks will look at the performance of winning favourites and or performance of favourites and second favourites, and if they're not winning as often as they're expected to win, they'll get frustrated by that. But it's like Ronan says, it's probably those tracks you want to be focusing on. It's all about finding the value, I suppose, where betting is obviously about betting things that you think are more likely to happen than the price says, and that can often be some of the bigger price runners, basically, as Tony alluded to there. So I'd be more focusing on those. But if you are a backer of favourites and second favourites, that might be the opposite of that.
You probably take it for granted tracks in Britain, Ireland. It's the unique thing that every track is different and completely idiosyncratic. It's not obviously the case over in America and Australia. The tracks are mostly the same. So I think it's good thing anyway. And we bring in the Kirat ride, was probably one of the Richard Kingscote and Kirat winning the Sussex Stakes, probably one of the biggest talking points of the week. So I have a couple of questions on this. Osmosis 28. How did ITV Racing award Ride of the Week to Richard Kingscote on Kirat? Kingscote admitted himself to ITV after the race things didn't go to plan, and he followed that with a near scandalous interview with Lydia Hislop. Richard Hoyles went through the sectionals, yet Jason Weaver and Leona Mayer waxed lyrical about the ride. And JD is asking thoughts on Kingscote, intimating he'd have slowed down if he'd seen it was fields of goal coming up on him. Harry, would you been falling off your chair there listening to that sort of thing, or what do you think?
I think what he said was, when I saw it wasn't a grey nose coming up, I kept whopping away, or something along those lines, which is a sort of double whammy, I suppose, in terms of things you don't particularly want to say on ITV. I think he wasn't being serious. I can't imagine for a second that was true. And I think, I think that a lot of sportsmen are massively over media trained, and I think it's one of the real challenges nowadays. Not so much in racing, but in other sports where you can actually watch the media training happening in front of you while being interviewed. And so I would be very keen to let people off when they slip up slightly, or make jokes that don't quite land. And so I would be very against criticizing him for this one. I don't think he meant either of those things. And I think if we go down the route of hammering jockeys for saying that sort of thing, then they'll just stop saying anything.
I think he's off for a stint in Hong Kong for 6 months. I think he wouldn't want to be making those jokes over there, I wouldn't have thought.
No, perhaps not.
Yeah, it's an interesting interpretation of that anyway. But yeah, I agree with the other point you make about bland interviews and stuff like that. You kind of want people to say what they think, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think that was a regrettable one, just because the fact that we're now talking about it suggests that it was regrettable. It's been picked up on. But I think if we think seriously that he was sitting to actually, what is it that we're suggesting he was implying there? That he wouldn't have raced as hard as if his stablemate was coming up behind.
I think that is exactly what everyone's implying.
Yeah, but I mean,
based on it,
absolutely. That's the implication of those that are saying he shouldn't have said it. But I mean, if you are going to do that, then going straight onto national television and casually admitting it strikes me as non-existently likely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
interesting. I don't know. I think it probably makes financial sense for what he joked about, in inverted commas, maybe, or maybe not. I think it's I think people sat at home after listening to that would believe that is what he thought. So
indeed. We'll move on to Galway, and we can bring AK down there for the week. I think he did 6 of the 7 days, which is a fine feat in itself.
yeah.
But we'll move on. We'll start with the kind of the issue with Dream On Baby at Galway on Saturday. So Dennis, well known as Carvel Till on X, is it prudent and is it fair to bookmakers and punters in the round to retrospectively declare horses as non-runners who line up and fail to get a good start, regarding Dream On Baby at Galway? So just to explain who anyone missed this, so Dream On Baby's lining up before the big race, the feature race at Galway yesterday, and he was basically left 10 lengths away from the field when the tape went back. And Donald Myler, who was riding him, basically just didn't take part in the race, went in and told the race day stewards that he'd followed the instructions. He said he was the only one to follow the instructions of the starter, Joe Banahan, and the rest of the field didn't comply. And Joe Banahan gave his evidence and said he didn't realise the horse was as far back as he would and put his hands up, basically. So not a great idea. But AK, you were down there and had to deal with this on the day. What was your kind of opinion here?
Everything about this is unsatisfactory. I must caveat this as saying I haven't watched the race, but I listened to the commentary on the tannoy as I'm sat behind the joint, and the commentator says the horse has jumped off, is detached however many yards, and it goes 100 yards or something, and then is pulled up. So in my head, I'm just like, the first thing I'm doing in my head at the back of the joint is the horses definitely ran, because horses that just stay at the start are counted as runners. And I'm listening to commentary of this horse has gone however many yards and then stopped. So in my head, I'm like, this horse has definitely run. So then you get the result. The result comes through. They're about to do the presentation in the ring, and then they announce, we're not going to do the presentation. There's a steward's inquiry. Steward's inquiry is called, and it's to do with the start. That is literally all they said. It's in relation to the start. So we're just like, you've got customers in front of you, and forget about online here now. I've got customers right in front of us at the track just trying to get paid out on horses. And we started paying some of them out. And I was like, well, if it's to do with the start, and then someone makes the point of, well, maybe they might avoid the whole race. And I was thinking, sure, they're probably not going to do that if everything went and one didn't. Even if they broke the start or didn't listen to the start. So we did start paying out, and then we stopped paying out as everyone wasn't paying out. So we just took a pull and stopped. And then you're waiting 20 minutes. I don't know how long the wait was. It was bloody forever. And then they announced no alter. So even just the first announcement in relation to the start, it doesn't say hold all bets, no payouts. It literally just says there's an inquiry into the start, nothing more. So the information is unsatisfactory straight away. Then they come back, no alterations to the place. It must have been 20-25 minutes after the inquiry is called. Like it's an absolute age at that stage. So we start paying out. So you pay everyone out. You first thing you do is tell all the punters that back the horse that went 50, 100 yards. Sorry, that horse has ran. It's counted as a runner. All right, no problem. You're paying all bets out. There's no Rule 4 because there's no withdrawal. 5 minutes after that, 10 minutes after that, maybe, this horse didn't run. It's a non-runner. Please go and get your money back off cut. So you've got customers then coming up to us at the track thinking that you've had them over. I just asked you for that bet. We had the one lad saying to us, you just told me that was a loser. Now he's telling me I get my money back. So immediately that creates a confrontational situation where the guy thinks I'm having him over, which is unsatisfactory. And then you've also just paid out a load of bets without a 10-cent Rule 4 on them and paid up massively over the odds, basically. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Total incompetence at every single stage of every announcement. It's incompetence. And then there's no comment on it. They don't even bother saying we fucked up here and we put a statement out. This is what we're going to do next time. Apologies. I think Jeff Banks in the UK had an issue with a Rule 4 or a reverse result, and he took the BHA to court and got 20 grand back off them or something like that. They'd want to be really careful that people don't get together and go, this is what you've cost us here. Add up the 70 bookies in the ring and you've cost us fucking 20 grand, 30 grand here. We want that back. It's not it's not, and then you add all the bets online and stuff like that. I think it's a joke, and it shows you how much respect they have for bookmakers and the betting public, that there's just no comment on it afterwards. Just, sure, this is what we do. I think it's really, really bad, but they don't care, obviously.
And I was thinking you need in a bustling Galway betting ring as well.
100%. It stifles bets on the next race. People holding on to the money and they can't collect from the race before. You create those confrontations, face-to-face confrontations. You can create plenty of problems doing that. It's that aren't just financial. Yeah, not good enough. Really not good enough. And the fact that they don't bother even holding the hands up because nobody's holding them to account over this is poor. Really, really poor.
And I don't know where the representative, I forget who, if it's still, I'm not sure if it's still Ray Mulvaney or someone from representing the bookmakers can raise this and have a conversation with them, AK, or how does that work?
I don't know. I don't know, mate, to be honest with you. What are they going to do? I don't think they care enough about getting stuff like that right because they don't understand the impact of getting it wrong, basically.
Yeah. On that aside, maybe give us an overview of Galway in general. The Stabilise asking for that overview of Galway, what turnover was like, how did Galway treat bookmakers overall? We dealt with that issue there.
Overall it was really good. Yeah, no, it was really good, really, really positive. I loved the track. You stood at the back of the track some days and it wasn't really hot. It was quite overcast, but it was nice. Probably the conditions that I quite like, to be honest with you. It's overcast, but not cold. And just the music, good vibes, hopping. You've talked about them. I love the fact that the mixed cards, the amount of different winning connections, different owners, different trainers. People think it's low grade racing. Some of it is. There's a few little strokey attempts pulled always at Galway. Like you have to stay on your toes. It's not as a bookmaker. It's not just no favourites won today. You won money. You'd want to keep your wits about you as well. Like it's a tough old place in some instances. But for a variety of racing, just the general mood at the track I think it's unbelievable. It's just a brilliant, brilliant 6 of the 7 days that I did. I think the Sunday's always generally quiet. It's a bit of a family day there. But yeah, it was class. There was plenty of money flying around. I think turnover in the ring is up 20% or something like that. I think it's really good. And like we keep saying, the festival's really, as long as it doesn't chuck it down like it did at Goodwood, I think the festivals are really probably outperforming at the moment in most places, probably bar the Curragh maybe. But it's going really, really well for big festivals, and Galway, another example of that.
I'm going to bring Tony and Harry in on this and kind of get what your impression is of Galway. I don't know if either of you have ever been to the meeting, but I always feel like I have friends that we used to work back in London and say, "Why don't you come over to Galway?" And they're like, "Oh, we're not go to Punchestown or Leopardstown, go to the big meetings." And I'm like, Galway's the buzz there is unbelievable. I don't know how to describe it, but it's just a great place to go racing, a great place to go out and have a few beers. And we had a question. I might bring in Buck Nasty. His question here. He's just asking, do you think the BHA could organise a Galway style festival, for example, a 4-day festival in Windsor, which would have a mix of quality national hunt and flat racing every day? Harry, could that be a goer, or what do you think?
Well, I don't think it would be the BHA that organised any particular race meeting. It would be for the owners of the track in question. I don't see why not. I mean, we've got a very settled market in British racing. The meetings tend to, the big meetings tend to really be pretty established now. And I think you just find yourself in a huge battle over trying to get the fixture on, and whoever else has got those dates, perhaps they could do it to an existing fixture. It's the question that can we get a sort of bigger festival going? We've got quite a few racing festivals, but they perhaps don't have that kind of vibe. And I haven't been to Galway, but it sounds a bit like Cartmel, perhaps that kind of sort of atmosphere.
Holiday destination, I suppose, that you go down
exactly.
somewhere.
Yeah.
So Cartmel's a bit like that, but it's some are jumping. The racing isn't for everyone. But yeah, look, why not? I'm not sure it's going to be at the top of anyone's priorities at the moment to be doing that, but we do need to get more people racing, more people interested in racing. And I'm sure one of the things that people are looking at is, it does sound worryingly though that it might include teacup rides, and for that reason I'm withholding some element of judgment on Galway Festival. But we no doubt will be looking at all sorts of things over here for increasing interest in racing.
Yeah, it's just there are a couple of initiatives by ARC recently. The Winter Millions at Windsor was previously at Linkfield. That was over 3 days. And ARC have just announced a 3-day meeting at Chepstow with the Welsh Chairman Hurdle being transferred from Fosslas to Chepstow. And I think they've marketed that as 39 quid for the 3 days.
Tony, have they done? They've started jumping again at Windsor, haven't they? Have they done a mixed meeting yet?
Yeah, no, not a mixed meeting.
No,
they did the Winter Millions at Windsor on the jumps track last year for a couple of days.
Yeah,
wasn't universally applauded by some connections because it's a really tight track for jumping. But there are initiatives out there. Like I said, ARC and Chepstow with that 3-day meeting in October. I think that's a new initiative. So there are out there, but the courses need to own the fixtures and be able to transfer them.
Yeah.
So as you said, Harry, it's racecourse groups kind of hold the power in actually doing that.
I think it'd be interesting. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here now. One of my big frustrations with some of the gaff meetings is the gaps between racing. So the 35-minute gaps are mixed cards. Just thinking off the top of my head here, potentially a way to reduce race times, the gaps between races, essentially, potentially.
Well, probably not, because it isn't the answer really. The reason you're doing a mixed meeting is because you want people to be interested. You want to cross pollinate. You want people to be interested in all the racing. And one of the reasons I would have thought is that gap. Obviously, you've got logistical reasons, but I've always thought the gap is really so that people can study the form, see the horses, get their bets on, and that's why it sort of sits around 30 minutes. So I would have thought that you couldn't really have two. Yeah.
I don't know. I think the frustration with the size of the gap is just people wanting something to bet on next. I think people, for a general public thing on poor days racing, I think people over factor in the form study and stuff is over indexed. I think it's more just having
it was
the next race a bit quicker.
But yeah, probably more.
I don't know.
Getting a drink and having a ride on whatever it is, and then getting to the next race. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just quickly, AK, before we move on, Life of Grimes was just asking about your kind of how the trading went down there for the week, with regards to winning money each day in and day out. As you just mentioned before, it's a real kind of roller coaster ride, Galway, isn't it? How did we fare down there on course?
Yeah, no, very good. Real profitable week, to be honest with you. It was a strong 5-figure winning week, basically. I won't go into too much detail, but I had one losing day. I think we did 18 grand in one of the days, and overall, just really profitable, to be honest with you. The results were good. We ducked and weaved well, and good. Can't complain.
Very good, very good. Moving on from Galway with a question from Lindsay Gray. Basically, looking for a hypothetical market where I think in regard to the BHA's ability to withdraw racecourse licenses for like a regulatory breach, i.e. like a weigh room, I suppose, or something that's not up to scratch. And if that hypothetical market was up, which would be the racecourse to shut first, which would be favourite? Any insight here, Anthony? Or sorry, Anthony, because your name is Anthony on Zoom here. Harry.
Yeah, one of our technical issues involves me being Anthony Kaminskis for this pod. I'm not going to name a track that I think is likely to get the chop for obvious reasons, but I can't see. I think there are a few people who think, and it is tempting to think, why didn't the BHA just threaten tracks with removing their license? But it's a bit like saying, why doesn't the president of a banana republic just take on the army? If it goes wrong and they turn against you, it's all very well having the power in theory, but it's the power in practice that matters. And I just don't think the BHA have the power. I'm not sure they should have the power really, to say, right, we're gonna close tracks down for non-compliance or suspend the license for periods of time. I think it would just create World War III and could well end up in the end of the regulatory system as we know it, were they to do that. And particularly, are they going to do that to an ARC track? Are they going to do that to a Jockey Club track? You wouldn't have thought they'd do it in a million years. The independents, are relatively powerful, particularly as a group. And so it's not the same. And as I said before, they do have a different relationship with the tracks who they license to, for example, jockeys and trainers who they license, because of the nature of the game. All the rules of racing are a document. It is also a huge industry and a political industry. And it's the politics that matters. So I can't see it happening. And if it does happen, I think that the other thing is people think that it would be a good thing. I think if you were to do it, that the doing it in a way that is actually for the good of racing would be trying to do it would be so dangerous because of the law of unintended consequences. I think you could end up with a split in the sport, as other sports have seen. When they don't like regulators, they just go off and get their own one. If you upset ARC enough, would they go, right, we're taking our tracks, we're going to get our own regulator, and we're going to say horse, then you get into fights about what the BHA would say, no doubt, is, well, those are now flapping races, so they can't race at Jockey Club tracks. It would just be a complete mess. So I just don't see it happening.
And we continue that theme because we have a couple of questions on Thurles. But first, before we get into that, just you got a bit of flack last week, AK, about your comment about the horses rated under 70. So Brian Buddy was asking, what does Anthony think will happen to the 4,500 horses rated under 70 that he doesn't want to go racing anymore. Does he think they will all have lovely homes to retire to? So he's asking for a bit of clarification there, okay, what your grand plan is.
Harry's going to stick them all in the back garden of that estate he's on anyway, so it's they'll all be all right there. They'll be well fed there anyway. So
yeah.
Um,
Can I just jump in here, Ronan? Because I think it's such a strange question, because it works on the basis that the status quo is maintainable. In other words, the choices are we keep the number of horses racing, or we reduce them by choice. The point that Anthony, and to an extent I were making last week, is that this is for the sustainability of horse racing in the long term. The choice is not keeping it as it is and reducing it by choice. The choice is keeping it as it is likely to end up in racing getting smaller and smaller overall, and these horses and trainers and jockeys and stable lads and lasses losing their jobs anyway. So you do have to make tough choices in these situations. And
I don't think anybody was suggesting that we call 4,500 horses that can participate in races. It was about the gradual, how would you pull the strings and maneuver things, and that is where you would start, in my opinion.
It is a perfectly reasonable and quite popular opinion in the sport that it is too big. And if you're going to get up, the people I feel sorry for in those circumstances are the people who really do it for love and are just scraping by, making a living at the bottom of the sport. Though they will be really badly affected and they'll probably go. That's who I would feel very sorry for. But that's not, you can't just work on the basis that we've got to keep everyone in racing in it, because it's too big.
Yeah, just a parting shot there. There was I think it might be Lee Mottershead over the weekend. He actually made the point that the foal crop numbers have gone down 25% from 2022 to 2025. So we might be forced into slashing that fixture list.
We might, and it's also about prize money, because the one thing that I think people are complacent about is racing has lost that Irish advert, which I think we might be talking about later, is really interesting, because it's about trying to re-establish the connection between the country of Ireland and the sport of horse racing and the thoroughbred racehorse. We've completely you wouldn't, if you made that advert in England, people were like, what are you talking about? There is no connection between the people of the United Kingdom and or certainly Great Britain and horse racing. We've lost that. That's gone. And it's proving almost impossible, really, to re-establish. It's possible that we can do the same thing to ownership in this country, owners of racehorses. We can, if we break it, the desire to own racehorses, because most people who are now doing it, vast number of people who are doing it out of love and basically setting fire to a pile of cash every month.
Exactly.
Once that connection between ownership and horse racing goes, that who is going to pay for the upkeep of these racehorses?
Yeah, and I think it's getting worse. I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, I think you used to own a 58 rated horse, and if you went to go and cut your prize in the ring at Lingfield, you'd probably get the same amount of money as you get now. So now you're getting a lot less in real terms. I think there was probably people there, and you got a little bit of kudos, and you might have felt nice and warm and glowy inside, picking your prize up in front of 300-400 people around the parade ring. Those same people are losing in real terms. The bills are going up, and they're turning up at Lingfield when they do win a race, and there's 5 people there around
and
the parade ring.
they're getting custard pies as their prizes and things like that. I mean, it's just
it's just not sustainable. And I think you have to, we as we've said, and as I've said, I think we've said, I've definitely said that the fixture list needs pruning as a minimum, and that's the area where you start, and you try and. We've talked previously about prize money at the top end and things like that, but I think it's the grade where you can potentially sell your horse to Hong Kong. I think is where we should be potentially directing a bit more money and a bit more and taking fixtures basically. Too many fixtures, too many meetings. They cannibalise each other from a betting point of view.
I think Nottingham would have you know, Harry, it's not custard pies there. It's high-end cheesecake.
Oh, high-end cheesecake. Well, it's not very permanent, is it? I mean, not unless you want your house to smell.
Not around me. It's
for a very long period of time.
Let's talk about the Thurles situation, lads. So a couple of questions on this. Catford Toper is asking Thurles what happens next. Ben Keith. I'll bring his question in a second. Just to give you a bit of background. So Thurles announced on Friday that they were closing they're going to close the track for racing. And in a story then in the Irish Field written by Mark Costello on Saturday, kind of giving a bit of background as to what might have been the real reason here. It appears to be that it's cost wise. The HRI brought out a manual in the last few months that basically holds racecourses to a certain standard, and with regards to facilities, watering facilities, etc. Thurles doesn't have a up-to-date watering facility as such. Not to get into the absolute details, but I believe it would cost them the guts of $500,000 to implement that. So lots of trainers have come out and been very negative about this, namely Willie Mullins and Henry de Bromhead. Not happy. Thurles obviously a track that takes rain quite well during the winter, and a good winter jumps track that's obviously kind of famous in Irish racing folklore, Thurles on a Thursday. So there's a lot of disappointment and a bit of frustration around what's going on here. And Ben Keith question, I'll just bring that in as well. Horse racing should choose to learn nothing, or horse racing chose to learn nothing from greyhound racing tracks ownership and deliberate demise to build housing. Following the closure of Thurles, will it be a week of pretend crying and reminiscing, then head straight back into the sand, or will lessons be learned and warnings heeded? So I guess, Ben's kind of asking what people like Henry de Bromhead had suggested as well. Are there other tracks that are going to be under pressure with regards to this HRI manual, and is that too much? Are we pushing tracks out? Don't know, AK, if you want to come in here. You've got a lot of experience of going to tracks around the country, and what you thought of the Thurles news in general.
Yeah, just my general thoughts. I know we just in the last topic spoke about unsustainability. I think even just in the UK, like levy yields seem, to what I can see, just at they couldn't be any higher. I think under the current, I think they've massively over-indexed the recent one, and I think the true line of where that'll be is a lot less. Will soon decrease, in my opinion. You've seen media rights. Media rights feel like they couldn't be any higher, in my opinion, and there's probably going to be a correction there at some point. And I just think, just with the game as it is at the moment, I just think I genuinely just don't think people realise that it feels very like it feels like a real tipping point to me regarding closures. I didn't know whether, like, the Thurles news seemed to be news to HRI. I saw some comments from somebody at the HRI saying they didn't need to do this all immediately, and like they've been working with Thurles in the last few months, and as they do with other tracks. But there's obviously the family at Thurles have obviously seen that run Thurles have seen just which way the wind's blowing there, and it feels like an unbelievable uphill battle. I didn't know whether there was a bit of game theory involved, whether they were hoping somebody would step in, or there's potentially somebody can take over the track or something. I honestly think the whole industry is just it's here from the financial income, and I just don't think it's sustainable. I think it's going to come down, and I think if tracks are struggling when I think the numbers are here, and I think they're going to be much reduced soon, I just don't see how there aren't going to be more closures coming on both sides of the Irish Sea, basically. And then we're talking about an unsustainable program book as well. It just seems inevitable to me that more tracks will go, and overall, I don't think that's that undesirable, to be honest with you. I think that probably, like I've mentioned, there probably does need to be some kind of pruning. But like I said, people like Ben has said there, that people reminiscing, oh, it's a great track for this, might be a great schooling track or whatever. And it tends to be the people that have benefited from that. You might call them vested interest, it's probably too harsh, but people who benefit from that and see the advantages of that. Would somebody else take over the track? I don't know why you would. I don't think it's in any way new, is it? Or I haven't been for ages, to be honest with you. But I think it's. I get people have the memories and the memories of the past, and these things happen there, and it's gonna, and I get all that. But I'd imagine for it to be sustainable in the future, never mind the present day, I'd imagine it's pretty tough. And when you've got a family grafting their arse off, and just deciding it's not doable for them anymore. I think they might potentially be getting out at the right time, to be honest with you. I think it's probably a good decision from them. And that might not be what people want me to say, but I think they're probably fighting against the tide a while, and sometimes it's time to stop if it's not making sense.
And it's family-owned track in Ireland as well, so it's disappointing on all levels, I suppose. But we'll see what happens. I suppose the thing is, whoever is the potential buyer will have to cough up a lot of money to get up to standard with that HRI manual. It's like buying a car that's needs a new clutch or something, I suppose, if you're going to have to invest a lot of money straight away. So we'll see what happens. Maybe hopefully someone can come in and save the day there. Bring in Harry Tregoni's question on the Racing Runs in Us advert. I thought it is a million times better than the BHA effort. So inclusive and not dealing with people like they are imbeciles. What do you think? Do you know the advertising budget spent? Surely not 3.6 million. Again, an example of the BHA looking for an audience that does not exist or is not already invested. This ad very much appeals to those who are interested in the game already. Harry, you like the ad. Do you want to kind of finish off your point there? I think it was pretty good as well. Very catchy and positive, kind of sending out the right message.
It was really good, and I think what was interesting about it was that it wasn't aiming on a micro level to get people to go horse racing, which is what so much of our advertising is here. It was more sort of subtle than that. It was to sort of perhaps play at the back of people's minds and their recollections, and perhaps a little bit of nostalgia as well. Nostalgia, it seems to be a very powerful marketing force nowadays. And I just wonder that, if a lesson can be learned over here is that we, some of our marketing for horse racing could be less about the experience, telling people about the experience of a day at the races, not least because it's not, it's so variable depending on what meeting you go to and where you go. But to try and do something a bit more subtle and, play to the sort of history of horse racing and the ties with British society and culture, and just try and remind people a bit of that and how important it was at various times, and soon it may even be too late already to remind people of it, because it may just be too far in the distance. But that's what I'd like to see people try, is something more along those lines, which is broader and more ambitious in scope, and more about sort of getting it back into the imagination as a major sport and a major part of British life. So I thought it was great. We couldn't do it, as I say, the same way over here, because the idea that everyone is sort of 6 inches from a race horse here is or rather in England and Wales.
6 inches from a rat, aren't you, in London?
Certainly 6 inches. 6 inches from a lawyer around where I am, which is even arguably even worse.
What has happened to that campaign, by the way? Like, genuinely not stirring any shit here now. What's happened since the teacups ad? Has anybody seen anything? Seriously.
Well, David Armstrong said it could have a bearing on racecourse attendances being up 5% in the last quarter.
Don't
Just
stop it.
Too cynical, Anthony.
Stop it. Stop.
Tony, I'll bring you back in on the question from John Joe Hurley. Is it feasible for Richard Hoyles to have a more prominent role in how the sport is run? There's no one more eloquent than when discussing key areas from injuries on the track to betting, and the sport are missing a trick if they haven't explored this. Maybe this is a bit far-fetched, Tony. I don't know what Richard Hoyles' kind of general career plan is, but I have to agree he's absolutely excellent when he does have to deal with kind of the tricky issues, and when he gets on the microphone at ITV and gets a 3-minute segment, he is excellent at exploring it. What do you think?
I think without him, ITV would really struggle, because he's an all-rounder. He can do everything, and like you said, he's so clear when he analyzes any subject. He carries a lot of authority. I did get in touch with him, and he said he was quite amused by the fact that someone suggested that. And I actually agree with him. I think he would be an excellent CEO of the BHA. But he said, I'm not patient enough for politics. I've not been asked. And I hope the person asking the question gets the help they need. Um, and so I said, I actually agree with John Joe. I said, you probably need 1 million plus to take that on, though. He said, yes. He said, and social media immunity. So
Yeah.
I think that's the point. That job is just an incredibly poison chalice, and I think even the universally respected Richard Hoyles would, even he would struggle.
I wouldn't be campaigning for him to be the next head of the BHA now. But yeah, he's very, very good. He's very good, and probably a more prominent role would definitely be a positive, I think, for the sport with his eloquence, but not just eloquence. There's plenty of people with nice plummy, nice accents and speak very well that are thick as shit. But he's pretty good.
Well, I think you'll probably keep sticking to the day job as it sounds there. But AK, you can take this one quickly from Ivor Weatherly because we definitely dealt with this a few times before on the podcast. So digital ticket update, 15 minutes to get in. Gate staff comment. Hope you have a paper ticket. Bar queues were 30 minutes. I went to Galway 3 days to breezed in with paper tickets. Bar queues minimal. UK racing needs to learn from the big festivals in Ireland. Would you agree there? Yeah.
I think definitely just from just the general demeanor of staff, I think, and you're not treated as if you're trying to circumvent some kind of system every 2 minutes. I think it's a lot more friendly. I think it's just natural, to be honest. And it's the one thing I notice. I don't know if it's because Ireland's probably slightly smaller, but and the big meetings maybe are slightly smaller than the big meetings in England. But it's you see the same people, don't you? It's the same people all the time. If you go through the gate to go, it's the same people on the day. It's the car park attendants around the country. They're all the same. It's like it just makes a difference. I think there's just some kind of familiarity that it brings, which I think, for want of a better phrase, warms the heart a small bit. One thing I did notice when I went through the gate at Galway, was everyone on the gates, the staff where you paid in, had a little green button. And every time you give them the ticket to get in or you paid to get in, they pressed the button. So they were recording the attendance, it seemed, accurately. Some other tracks could maybe learn from that, maybe.
Yeah. Attendance are up.
Some tracks probably wouldn't bother.
Attendances were up quite significantly. So
Yeah.
Some tracks probably wouldn't want to be that accurate, perhaps, maybe. I don't know.
Ronan. Wow, that's the most controversial thing you've ever said.
I'm not saying any tracks in particular.
I knew we'd gradually bring him down to our level.
Come on. Come and join us in the weeds down here.
Seth has a question. The Racing Post interview in the paper today, which would have been yesterday, was with Gary Wiltshire. So not even the Sugden family, I'm not sure if I got that correctly. The Sugden family on Emmerdale have milked anything more than Gary Wiltshire's Dettori and his Super 7. You're laughing away, Tony. There, do you want to come in on this one?
No, I can see where he's coming from, isn't it? But I mean, I haven't read his book, but I know Anthony and I know Anthony and Harry have. And but the thing that really struck me about that interview is he reckons he's from a table topping 37 stone after a gastric band, he's now down to 24 stone. I mean, he's all of that 24 stone, isn't he? I've seen some pictures of him. God, dearie me. But no, everyone loves Gary for good reason. He's great value. Like I said, I haven't read his book, but yeah, I think it's fair to say he's got £1 million worth of publicity out of that. But
he's got more, all right. But like you say, everyone loves him, and I think that's true. I think he's just a genuine guy. I don't really know anyone who's got a bad word to say about him, to be honest with you.
No.
And I think what is although it's well known and well told, I think what I've unbelievable respect for from him is he, like you said, he went to Ascot with £2,000 and lost 1.4 million or whatever the number is. He paid every penny, and it took him 4 years, and he sold his house and he sold his cars, and he worked like a dog to pay that off. And I swear to God, I don't know many people that do that. And when you talk about Gary Wiltshire, I think that's the most unbelievably impressive thing.
Yeah.
From an honour point of view, I've probably ever heard regarding a bookmaker. To be honest, would you? Maybe some people would you been off the wife and the wife leaving you and bloody because of all this and selling your bloody massive gaff that 700 grand in the 90s? God knows what that would be worth today. Would you sell all your cars? Would you work for 4 years and would you pay everyone off? Like it's absolutely mesmerizingly unbelievable for me.
Yeah.
And
Just a quick question, Harry. If he wanted to just like say to everybody, I'm not paying, would they have any recourse to make him pay?
No, he would have lost his license, I'm sure. But this was pre-Gambling Act, so gambling debts weren't enforceable. And of course, he was probably trading through a limited company. He could have put that into liquidation. So there were plenty of ways of making life easier for himself. If he didn't want to pay it off, he could just move away from bookmaking, let the business go bust, depending on what assets were in it, of course. When a debt's that, it's the old adage: when you owe the bank 100 quid, you've got a problem. If you owe the bank 1,000,000 quid, the bank's got a problem. I'd be much more worried if I'd been a punter with a large debt there than Gary in many ways. But as AK says, it was amazing that he paid that out, and it probably is underappreciated actually nowadays.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like I can't think of anything. I can't think of any similar, whatever the word is, precedent or a previous example of that occurring, or before or after, from a personal sacrifice point of view. It's incredible, and it should always. It's the most impressive thing. It's more relevant than anything he talks about, I think, and he doesn't even really ham that bit home. But it's incredible, and if you're at the track, you probably should bet with him just because of that. It's incredible.
Agree.
Question from Tony. One for you, Harry. Why was Sybil vote banned for 6 months in France when trainers get a slap on the wrist for similar accepted contamination cases here for their horses? So I believe I should have. Sorry, apologies, bad presenter duties here, but I should have looked into this properly to see if there's an update. But I believe this is back to a contaminated or positive cocaine test a couple of months ago. Is that correct? I don't know how familiar you are with this story, Harry. Yeah,
only through third-party reports. That's right. Cocaine contamination. She used an argument that's been used by jockeys who've had it, including Ashley Murphy, had it the automatic ban reduced. It's still quite a harsh ban. I still think they got 3 or 4 months on those occasions where they say basically they're cross-contaminated by someone else. In her case, she said it was a sexual partner. They didn't buy it this time round, the panel. It's slightly confusing. They said they seem to hold against the fact that she admitted to having used cocaine at some point in the past. So I'm slightly lost by why that is a relevant factor in it. And it seems to me that you would encourage people not to admit or things like that. If you hold it against them in these circumstances. Not much more to add to that. The French system is very different to ours, and it's not as easy to see into from the outside, in my experience. And for whatever reason, they decided that I think it's the automatic 6-month ban should apply. I think it applies in 90%, maybe more of these instances with jockeys. Trainers, I simply don't know enough about what's been happening to French trainers to do a comparison, I'm afraid.
I think he was referring to the recent cases with John Gosden and Ed Dunlop, where
those aren't recreational drugs, and they aren't ingested by the person in question. They are ketamine cross contaminations, which is a drug administered to horses, and it is also used. It's very confusing. Ketamine can be a difficult one because it's also used recreationally by humans. You've got stable staff in Newmarket where there is. It is well known that there is relatively widespread recreational drug use in Newmarket in the racing community, and I think it's just a totally different kettle of fish. It's much harder to be in control if you run a yard of 150 horses, and it's much harder to be in control of whether they're cross-contaminated by ketamine than it is whether you get cocaine into your own system.
Indeed. We'll move it on. We're a bit tight for time here, lads. A bumper episode this has turned into for the year podcast. John O is asking, does racing really need Nigel Farage in its corner? So, Tony, you can take this. I believe there was an interview with Farage on ITV, was it?
Yeah, Nigel Farage is a friend of Jim Hay, a prominent owner. So yeah, ITV interviewed him. I think Hay actually invited Liz Truss last year, so he's obviously kind of like very politically motivated. Farage says he agrees with racing about the tax angle. I think more concerning to racing would be trying to get Labour on board rather than reform in the short term. And obviously, we should just mention that Lord Allen agreed to take up the position last week, starting on September the 1st. So I imagine Lord Allen's contacts with the Labour politicians would be of more concern and use to racing than Nigel Farage. Just saying. Yes.
That might be true in the present day, but it's probably also worth saying that Reform are favourites to get more seats at the next general election at present.
Yeah.
Ahead of Labour.
Yeah. You can't rule them out at all, and it's probably quite sensible forward thinking now.
Mm.
Not the worst to have. Two questions on Oddschecker, AK, you can take. Mike Quigley is asking, was AK bets on Oddschecker before the subscription model was introduced? If yes, has he noticed a decline in click-throughs since that was introduced? Seems crazy to me that Oddschecker is restricting the majority, I guess, of punters accessing bookmakers' prices. And Steve Mustard also asking, Oddschecker has done a decent job in pretty much paywalling itself. Does AK now have to pay less to list on there?
Without trying to be too specific on this one, what I would say is we joined Oddschecker about 3 weeks before that paywall came into place, so we probably didn't really experience pre-paywall. When I was at Royal Ascot, I struggled to get on Oddschecker myself, which I wasn't too happy with. And do we have to pay less? No, we weren't informed of that when we joined. And I think just now we're on our own license. We're probably looking at all of our relationships to see whether they make sense and making decisions based on that. So, unsure where we're going to sit longer term with Oddschecker, to be honest with you. It's 50-50 into.
Last question, quite a leading one, I suggest as well, from Michael George. Why does it's for you, AK? Why does he not bet arbors and he practices it daily himself?
You'll have to tell me where I practice it, but no, I detest arbors, to be honest with you. Add nothing to the ecosystem. My views of arbors are long known and shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, I don't think, who follows this podcast anyway. But yeah, I think a few things guaranteed: death, taxes, and in 20 years, arbors still moaning they can't get on. I think I just don't understand why, if you think you're anywhere smart, you'd blow an account for 50 quid of expected value. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. I think on the curve of people who think they're smart and are probably some of the dumbest people around, they'd be right up there for me.
Okay, on that note, we'll sign off. Or unless there's any other business, all good, lads. Yeah.
Nothing from me,
Oh,
Brendan.
good. I'm on holiday here. Got kids in the pool there, just in the background. Just gonna have to get back to it, I'm afraid.
Just go and tell her that you've done your Conkers Wiltshire style, then she's going to have to sell the house. You're going to have to go down and buy a tent for her to live in for the next 4 years while you can pay it off.
I'll see how it goes anyway. Probably the same way Gary had to. But yeah, it's, yeah, we'll see.
Good. Thank you for listening. Thanks to the lads for the contributions. We got there in the end. As always, if you're having a bet this week, do check out the AK Bets Big Prices tab with the football season kind of trundling in to get going now. and all the big football outrights are up there. With the Football League back at the weekend as well, was we did a lot of business on that, I saw. So do check that out if you're having a bet this week. And if not, that's all to say is thank you for listening. Thanks to the lads, and we'll talk to you again next week.